Right now, in a pantry you've probably never seen, there's a 3-month food supply that costs less than $200 and will still be good in 20 years. Not freeze-dried camping meals. Not buckets of wheat. Regular food your family actually eats, bought at a regular grocery store, stored with a method the Amish have used for generations. And when I tell you the one thing they never do, the mistake that ruins most stockpiles in months, you will never look at a can of beans the same way again. This is not about doomsday. This is about what happens when a paycheck stops, when a storm closes every road, when the supply chain you trust with your family's next meal breaks for just 2 weeks. The grocery store has 3 days of food on its shelves. Most American homes have less than 4. And the gap between those two numbers is where every crisis lives. I met a woman named Miriam in Holmes County, Ohio, who showed me what that gap actually looks like. She opened a door to a room no bigger than a closet. Shelves from floor to ceiling. Mason jars filled with rice, beans, oats, and things I could not identify. She pointed to a row of canned tomatoes and said, "Those are from 2017. I laughed. She didn't. She opened one. It looked like it was canned yesterday. Smelled like summer. And when I asked her how much she spent to build the entire room, she wrote a number on a scrap of paper that made me stop recording. $173. For 3 months of meals. For a family of 5. And that is when I realized everything I thought I knew about food storage was wrong. Not a little wrong. Completely backwards. The companies selling 50-pound buckets of freeze-dried meals for $300 want you to believe this is complicated. They want you to think it requires special equipment, special food, special knowledge. The truth is simpler and older than any of that. And it starts with something you already own. Your grandmother's pantry. Not literally, but the method. The one our grandparents and their grandparents used without thinking twice. Because before 1975, almost every home in America had what Miriam has. Not as a hobby. Not as preparation for disaster. Just as Tuesday. Because the world before just-in-time grocery delivery was a world where you kept food on hand the way you keep a spare tire in your trunk. Not because you expect a blowout every morning, but because walking without one is foolish. And something happened in the late 20th century that erased that instinct from American life. The average supermarket now carries a 3-day supply of food. That is it. 3 days. The trucks stop, the shelves go empty. It happened in 2017 in Florida when Hurricane Irma closed ports. It happened in 2020 when the pandemic froze supply chains and half the country saw empty pasta aisles for the first time in their lives. FEMA calls it the 3-day gap. 3 days is what stands between normal and nothing. And every emergency management agency in the United States tells you to have 2 weeks of food. Minimum. They have been saying it for 40 years. And almost nobody listens. But here is the number that should keep you awake. The average American household has 3.7 days of food at home. 3.7. That is 0.7 days more than what sits on the grocery store shelf. So if the trucks stop for just 4 days, the math is not complicated. You run out. Everyone runs out. And when everyone runs out at the same time, the word they use is not inconvenience. It is crisis. I found a document from the Department of Agriculture that explains why this happened. The year was 1973. The Arab oil embargo had just doubled fuel prices. Fertilizer costs exploded. Food prices shot up 20% in a single year, and Americans panicked. They cleared shelves. They hoarded. And the grocery industry learned a lesson it never forgot. A population with full pantries does not panic buy. It does not pay surge prices. It does not need the store at all. And a customer who does not need you is not a customer. They are a threat to quarterly earnings. So the system changed. Slowly, quietly, over decades. Warehouses shrank. Shelves thinned. The backup that once existed in the supply chain disappeared because the industry decided that backup was bad for business. And they were right. Just not for the reason they told you. But there is a community that never adopted any of this, that never reduced their pantries or trusted the system to always work. They kept the old way. And when the rest of the country was panicking over empty shelves in 2020, they did not change a single habit. Because they didn't need to. The community I am talking about is barely 20 miles from where you might be sitting right now if you live anywhere near the Midwest. Holmes County, Ohio. The largest Amish settlement in the world. And when the rest of America was panic buying toilet paper and canned soup in March of 2020, the Amish were not in those lines. Not because they were lucky, because they had done the one thing our grandparents took for granted and we have been taught to forget. They kept a working pantry, not a closet full of dusty survival buckets. A real pantry full of food they ate every single day, rotated, replenished, and designed to last months without a single trip to town. I spent 3 days with Miriam and her family. Her husband Samuel, their 4 children, and a kitchen that looked like a living museum of common sense. I watched her cook 3 meals a day from dry goods, jars, and cans. I asked her the question I thought would expose the whole operation. Where is your freeze-dried food? She pointed to a 5-gallon bucket of rolled oats in the corner. That is freeze-dried, she said. It costs 69 cents a pound. Then she showed me the real secret. The thing most people do wrong from the first day they try to build a stockpile. They buy food they never eat. 50-pound sacks of hard red wheat. Cans of powdered eggs that sit untouched for years until the expiration date passes, and they end up in the trash. The Amish rule is so simple it sounds like a cheat code. Store what you eat. Eat what you store. And never buy anything you wouldn't cook for a Tuesday night supper. That one principle changes everything, because it means the food moves. It never sits. Miriam's pantry is not a museum of forgotten purchases. It is a living inventory. She buys 4 cans of tomatoes, she puts them in the back of the shelf. She takes the 4 oldest cans from the front and cooks them tonight. First in, first out. The system she uses has no moving parts, no electricity, no software. It is literally just putting the new stuff behind the old stuff. But that simple act means nothing in her pantry ever expires. It is consumed before the date even comes close. And the dates themselves, those little stamped numbers we treat like countdown timers on a bomb, are not what you think they are, at all. But before I show you the true math of a $200 stockpile, I need to tell you about a mistake that costs the average American household $1,500 a year. Food waste. That food you throw away because the date on the package has passed. Except here is what you were never told. Those dates are not safety dates. They are not regulated by the federal government except on infant formula. The Department of Agriculture says it plainly. Best by, sell by, use by. Those are quality suggestions from the manufacturer. Not expiration. Not danger. A can of vegetables with a date from 2 years ago is almost certainly as safe and as nutritious as the day it was packed, provided the can is not bulging or rusted. The USDA has found canned food from a steamboat that sank in 1865. The food was 109 years old. It was tested. It was safe. The vegetables had lost a little color and about 20% of their vitamin C. That is it. In more than a century. So why do we throw away 30 to 40% of the food supply every year? Why do grocery stores discard perfectly edible produce and pull cans from shelves the moment the date passes? And why does the very same food industry that created these labels spend millions of dollars lobbying to keep the government from standardizing them in a way that would tell you the truth? The answer is waiting on Miriam's shelves. And the math she showed me on that scrap of paper will make you reevaluate every trip to the supermarket you have ever made. She handed me the scrap of paper and I unfolded it on her kitchen table. 3 columns. The first column was the food. Rice, 50 pounds. Rolled oats, 25 pounds. Pinto beans, 30 pounds. Lentils, 20 pounds. Salt, sugar, cooking oil, a case of canned tomatoes, a case of green beans, a case of corn, flour, baking powder, yeast, powdered milk, coffee. Nothing exotic, nothing freeze-dried, nothing that required a special website or an emergency supply catalog. She bought every single item at a discount grocery store called Sharp Shopper, 10 miles down the road. The second column was what she paid. 16 cents a pound for rice, 22 cents a pound for oats. The beans were 50 cents a pound. The total for all the dry goods combined was $91. The canned goods were $44. The oil, salt, sugar, and spices added $38. The third column was the number of meals. She had calculated exactly how many breakfasts, how many suppers, how many days of full calories this room could produce for a family of 5. The number was 93. 93 days, 3 months, for $173. Now I know what you are thinking, because I thought it too. What about fresh food? What about meat? What about vegetables? And this is where Miriam taught me something that reframes the entire concept of a stockpile. She opened her freezer. Inside were gallon bags of frozen green beans she had grown in her garden the summer before. She had a quarter of a cow from a neighbor's farm, wrapped in butcher paper, costs split between 3 families. She had chickens in the yard, laying eggs every morning. The stockpile was not the whole diet, it was the foundation. The dry goods and canned goods were the calories that never fail, the base you can always count on, while the fresh food rotated in from the garden and the local sources that also did not depend on a grocery supply chain. This is what our grandparents called a normal kitchen. But the Amish do something else that almost no one else gets right. They understand the 4 enemies of stored food: heat, light, moisture, and oxygen. Most people buy a bag of rice and throw it in a closet still in the original plastic. That bag has microscopic holes. Oxygen gets in. Moisture follows. Pests find it. The rice goes bad in 6 months. Miriam took me to the back of her pantry and showed me the real secret. Food-grade 5-gallon buckets with Gamma Seal lids. Inside each bucket, a heavy-duty Mylar bag. The bag is filled with dry goods. Then a small packet about the size of a tea bag gets dropped in before sealing. An oxygen absorber. The iron powder inside that packet binds to any oxygen left in the bag. Without oxygen, insects cannot hatch. Mold cannot grow. The food does not oxidize. And when stored in a cool, dry, dark space, those buckets keep rice edible and nutritious for up to 30 years. 30 years. Not a typo. Brown rice has a shorter shelf life because of the oils in the bran, but white rice stored this way will still be good when your children are adults. And here is the detail that makes the whole system borderline free. The buckets cost $3 at a hardware store. The Mylar bags are 50 cents each in bulk. The oxygen absorbers are 10 cents apiece. You can store 50 pounds of rice for less than $4 in supplies, and that rice will last 3 decades. Compared to the cost of replacing spoiled food every year, the supplies pay for themselves in the first rotation cycle. But the moment that made me realize how deep this goes had nothing to do with buckets or oxygen absorbers. I asked Miriam the question every person watching is asking right now. What if you mess up? What if something does go bad? What if you forget to rotate? She smiled, the way someone who has lived a long time through things the rest of us can't imagine smiles, and she said something I have not stopped thinking about. She said, "We don't forget, because we eat from it every day. It's not a stockpile. It's our pantry." And that right there is the difference between a 3-month food supply that costs $2,000 and one that costs less than $200. The Amish system is not a separate category of emergency food. It is the food they eat. The rotation is not a chore. It is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when the pandemic hit and the grocery store shelves emptied, the Amish did not even notice. Not because they are special, because their pantry was already there, already full, already in motion. Now, before I show you the exact list, the exact steps to build this yourself, starting this weekend, I have to tell you why the grocery industry spent decades making sure you never learned this. And the number is even bigger than you think. The number is $408 billion. That is how much food American households throw away every single year, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. More than a third of every calorie produced in this country never reaches a human mouth. And the grocery industry does not see that as failure. They see it as repeat customers, because a family that throws away expired food is a family that comes back to the store sooner. A family that does not keep a pantry is a family that buys at full price every week. A family that never learned how to store dry goods for more than 6 months is a family that pays the sticker price on everything, every time, forever. The supermarket business model depends on one assumption: you have no buffer. They keep 3 days of inventory on the shelf because anything more would be wasted floor space that could be selling something with a higher margin. They stamp dates on cans, not because the food spoils on that day, but because it gives you permission to throw it away and buy another. The entire system is engineered to keep you returning. And the moment you build a real pantry, you stop playing by their rules. So here is the exact system, not a theoretical one. The one Miriam used, the one you can start this weekend with a trip to a single discount grocer. You begin with $20, not $200. $20 buys 12 pounds of rice, 8 pounds of beans, and a bag of salt. That is week 1. Week 2, another 20. Oats, flour, cooking oil. Week 3, canned vegetables on sale. The dented cans they marked down by half. Week 4, sugar, baking powder, powdered milk. By week 10, spending $20 a week, you have the caloric backbone needed to feed a family of 5 for 3 months. The math is not aspirational. It is arithmetic. Rice at 16 cents a pound times 50 pounds is $8. Beans at 50 cents a pound times 30 pounds is $15. The entire dry goods foundation sits comfortably under $100, leaving you a second $100 for canned goods, condiments, and the storage supplies themselves. Now the storage. You do not leave anything in the original bags. You go to Home Depot or any hardware store and buy food-grade 5-gallon buckets at $3 each. You buy Mylar bags online, 50 cents a piece in packs of 20. You buy oxygen absorbers, 200 for less than $15. Drop 1 absorber per J-Allen of storage volume into a Mylar bag. Fill the bag with your dry goods. Leave enough space to seal it with a hot iron or a hair straightener. Put the sealed bag in the bucket. Snap on the gamma lid. Label the outside with the contents and the month you packed it. That bucket is now immune to insects, mold, and oxidation for decades. You never touch it until one day, years or decades from now, you do. And when you do, you will eat the oldest bucket first, replace it with a new one, and keep the cycle going. That is the entire method. No electricity. No freezer required. No freeze-dried company taking $300 for a bucket of pasta primavera. Just the food you eat, stored how it should be, rotating every meal. But the final piece of this is the one that makes it all work, and I discovered it in the last hour I spent in Miriam's kitchen, staring at a shelf of tomato jars from 2017 and realizing she was not afraid of any of this at all. She wasn't afraid because she had no reason to be. The system wasn't a burden. It was the opposite. While the rest of us worry about supply chains and rising prices and whether the store will have what we need next week, the people who kept the old ways simply live inside a different reality. One where security doesn't cost a subscription fee, where the food you need tomorrow is already in the next room, and where the knowledge of how to keep it didn't come from a government pamphlet or a corporate marketing campaign. It came from the people who raised you, just like their people raised them. You don't need a farm. You don't need a homestead. You don't need anything except a closet, $20, and the decision to start. If this way of thinking makes sense to you, then you are the kind of person who already knows that the most valuable thing you can build is something no one can take away. Hit subscribe if you want more of this. We're going deeper into the forgotten systems next week. And if this content made sense to you, there's a special offer I've put together through the link in the first pinned comment. It's for the people who get it. And I think you do.